Welcome back to another episode of Coaches Exploring the Untethered Soul. And this week we have a special guest, Vanessa Rubera, joining us. So welcome, Vanessa. And today we're doing chapter 3, Who Are You? And I'll just lead it off reading basically the first paragraph. Ramana Maharshi, 1879 to 1950, a great teacher in the yogic tradition, used to say that to attain inner freedom, one must continuously and sincerely ask the question, who am I? Who am I? Who sees what I see? Who hears what I hear? Who knows that I am aware? Who am I? And then, boy, does it get good after that. I was re-listening to this yesterday when I was out for my walk, and I just love the way Michael Singer kind of paces you through this journey, like unraveling that, well, I'm Sally Smith. I was thinking in my own head, oh, well, I'm Greg Fisher. And then, am I really Greg Fisher? Or is that just in my mom kind of thing? Anyway, I love the way he kind of takes one answer at a time and kind of peels it back.
Mm. Mm.
It was kind of a magical journey for me when I read that chapter in that way. Just going deeper and deeper till the end.
Yeah, it had me. I use my. I can't see that. I use this. What do we call that again?
Highlighter.
But I just keep writing labels. Because we appear to have so many labels. It's just that's what I read it again today. I don't know how many times now, but yeah, how many labels, and how many labels have we had? How many labels have we put on ourselves or other people have? Yeah, that was what was coming through for me.
And how easy it is for us to, I don't know, identify with or buy into those labels as being truth.
Yeah. And how he, little bit later on in the next page, he says, so you contemplate this, the question, and you realize that never in your life you asked yourself that question and really meant it. Like, who am I? And it was so true of me reading through this, because I kept, as Lynne was saying, like I couldn't get away from the label. Like, it was almost if I said, I can't believe what you're writing here. No. This is, and like every time he just moves, as Greg said, it's one step deeper. And it's sort of impelling, because you have to say, well, okay, because every time it's like he's in your head while you're reading it. And you're kind of being the conscious objector, sort of like, I'm not going to have any of this. This just can't be. And the more he goes into it, the more he takes you away from the outside, and somehow it also becomes like easier to look inside. You can be almost less hard on yourself with your own resistance, which I don't know whether everybody has that, but certainly I feel that reading it. Like, well, I don't want to not have this label of being me and being 5'8" tall, 5'7.5" or something, and whatever. I don't want to be anything else than that. There can't be anything else that's better than that. Come on. And it's just the as Greg said, the pacing as well, and like you've got to find out. You don't want it, but you want it. You don't want it, but you've got to find out. And so it goes on. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was reading or listening to that part about, Sally Smith recounting where she was born and grew up and stuff, at the same time, I was thinking about, oh yeah, well, I'm, Greg Fisher was born in Quebec. We moved to Ontario when it was like a year and a half, and I went to this school and it this, and I realized, like, oh my God, like I've had this very intricate story of an accumulation of all of these experiences through my whole life that have made me who I am. Like that, up until discovering this book and this chapter, I would have, gone all in on that definition of myself as a collection of those experiences. And then I highlighted this line on page 35 in my book. You've just described all these experiences, but who had these experiences? And it's like, yeah, exactly.
The thing that really got me is this idea that your descriptions, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, they change. They change. And what's the constant? As Greg was speaking, I'm Greg Fisher. I thought, I'm Vanessa Rubera. But, I changed my name in my late 20s. I had a whole different name. Who was that person? But we do, we get attached to these labels, and they feel real. How can they not be true? They're not false.
Well, I love your example because it's there's something there about like becoming somebody new, like, and the need or the benefit of renaming yourself to be that new you. And it's funny, when I left school and started working, my middle name's Scott. I had an idea I was going to become Scott Fisher. And part of the reason is because when I say my name, Greg, a lot of people go like Craig or Frank, or I don't know what they hear, but I always had trouble my whole life with Greg, maybe the way I say it, or I don't know. So even to the point where I started making sure that I pronunciate the G's as clearly as possible. But I thought one way to solve that is I'll just go by my middle name. Anyway, I can't even remember. I don't think I ever experimented with it, but I did contemplate it seriously for a very long time.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think back, oh yeah, what would my life have been like if I was Scott Fisher instead of Greg Fisher?
Yeah. And the part where he says, it's the difference between outside and inside, and you are definitely not anything that is outside of you. And just a thought just struck me from, Vanessa's starting, change my name. Well, and I'm just thinking, well, I changed my life. I literally left home. I ran away from home. And I was aware at the time that I was thinking that I'd be, if I changed my environment, things would be different. And horrified to find out, yes, okay, fun, joy, wonderful, great, wonderful for a few years. But then all the rest of what we've always sort of considered like who we are, the name, your let's say scholastic abilities or your competencies or all this kind of thing, well, they didn't change in the slightest. So you've got this like the shadow kind of following you, but of course the shadow is always outside of you. It's not you. And that's, yeah. And it's sort of, so reading this chapter as well, and alongside that comment, Vanessa, it's like, oh, well, it's okay anyway. Because the other information that I got from this is that you is a very solid, it's a very, well, definitive, and it's a very neutral being. It has no label on it whatsoever at all. And that's fine.
What also struck me as I was reading through this chapter was the lens that we people go to change stuff out there. To your point, Elaine, to moving or to changing your name or whatever. to change the whatever feelings we're having, but we're bringing us with us regardless of the circumstance. And I'm thinking about, people who what popped up just right then, listening to Vanessa, was when people decide to retire. So as they're going through this thought process of retiring, and then, oh wow, what am I giving up? And then who am I going to be? And what will people think of me? And who am I without my executive hat on? Or all these things, but that carrying all that around, and this notion that they're always moving. The thoughts, the positions, the locations, they're the moving bits. We are the constant bit. Yet we go to such lengths at times to get away from that constant bit. Yeah.
Well, as he was leading us through this journey, I kept waiting. Okay, there's going to be this major, profound thing at the end of it, and at the end it says, "Me, it's me. I'm in here experiencing all of this. That's about the best answer you'll have." And it's like, at first glance, it seemed like a disappointing answer. Like, oh, that's but the more I went on through the chapter, the more profound it did come, and the simple, how simple it is too. And then I highlighted, so right away in one foul swoop, you know that you're not the outside world. You're the one who's inside looking out at the world. And to link up to what you guys are saying about the outside, inside. And this, again, one of the things I'm always doing when I'm reading stuff now is trying to clock it back to the principles. And, this obviously the language of outside and inside is very congruent with the three principles and the notion of the inside out nature of life versus the outside in misunderstanding.
I read that same line about one fell swoop, and I just saw this scoop come down, and it was very visceral. One fell swoop. The other thing, though, that we haven't mentioned yet is that it's not only inside versus outside, because inside are your thoughts and emotions and feelings. It's even deeper than that. You, the experiencer, is experiencing the outside stuff, but also that inside stuff. And if you can even take a step further back into your pure consciousness, your pure awareness, he says, the great mystery begins once you take that seat deep within. That struck me, that knocked me over and felt so good to me to read that line. The mystery begins. I'm in.
We're up for that.
I want that seat.
When you did your one foul swoop motion, the image that came to my mind is like in The Wizard of Oz, like when the curtain comes down or you go behind the curtain and see, oh, the illusion is over. Like this is what's really going on here. It was, and once you can't unknow it. Highlighted the sentence that says, eventually you'll begin to realize that the outside world and the flow of inner emotions come and go. But you, the one who experiences these things, remain consciously aware of whatever passes before you. I think this is where he got into the subject-object kind of explanation of who we really are, which I thought was a great, like, black and white way of thinking about it. And there's a line which, if you told me this was a Sid Banks quote, I would have believed you. It says, "You are not your thoughts. You are simply aware of your thoughts."
Yeah. Just, I think, back a bit from that as well, when he sort of brings you back to ground, sort of like, oh, right. He says, thoughts can stop, and they can also get extremely noisy. Sometimes you have many more thoughts than other times. You may even tell someone, my mind is driving me crazy. Ever since he said those things to me, I can't even sleep. My mind just won't shut up. And then he says, whose mind? Who is noticing these thoughts? Isn't it you? Didn't you hear your thoughts inside? And aren't you aware of their existence? In fact, you can't get rid of them. And like, oh, okay. Okay. I find that very grounding, because it just sort of explains, well, that's, let's say, the human side of things that go to create experiences, good or bad, whichever way it is. But they're there. They're there. Like Vanessa was saying, the difference inside, outside, but also there's a part of us that we look at inside of ourselves, but it still has a label on it. And you can't make those things go away necessarily, which is also, I find, very soothing to hear. Like, it's okay like that. It's okay. But it's still not you. It's still not you. And because the you who you really are is something so far beyond that, and so perfect, so pure. And further on, he says, consciousness is the highest word you'll ever utter. And that's what we are. And it's much easier when you, at least in this case, I feel I've been guided right towards it, and it's been put in front of me. There you go. Consciousness is now wonderful. Oh, I can handle that. Or better still, I can handle all the other rubbish I've been telling myself. It kind of makes my life easier. It somehow lets me off the hook.
Yeah. Well, I like that. For me, it's the knowing that you can't make your mind shut up. Kind of gives you permission to stop trying to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's what do they call it? A fool's errand.
Yeah.
It's like a movie. Just sit back in your seat and watch it.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that occurred to me when I was listening to this was going back to some of the courses I've taken with Jamie, and there's often a question, because I took the advanced program twice, and people, well, why would you take it twice? And often my answer would be, well, I'm a different person now than I was the first time I took it. So I'm basically experiencing it and seeing the whole thing with new eyes. And everyone would kind of like nod and go, oh, that's a perfectly acceptable answer. Like, it makes complete sense. And then in the context of all this, it's like, what a bunch of bullshit. Not that it was wrong or bad or anything, but it's just like, no, like there's that constant. I think you used the word, Vanessa, constant. Like there's I'm not a different person than I am. And the way I was kind of seeing it was kind of like this, I don't know, continuum between living 100% in the voice in my head, or 100% in my consciousness, or in my awareness of it. And the deeper my grounding gets, and the more, I guess, I study stuff like this, the more that my place on that continuum moves towards consciousness. So I'm, I don't know, each time I take a program with Jamie or do one of these calls with you guys, I'm inching my way closer to this seat of consciousness that the singer talks about here.
Just on a kind of lighter note, I'm wondering, Greg, she said, I am not a different person. comparing the two experiences of the two advanced, or when people ask you the two advanced programs with Jamie, I wonder if it would be more correct to say I is not a different person rather than I am not a different person. Because that actually separates in one way, although it's you know a complete part of your own wholeness.
Yeah.
But it differentiates let's say linguistically, when we say, well, I'm not a different person, well, you're still out there with a label.
Yeah.
But I is not a different I is not a different person, is a different thing. And it sort of points to that I being that thing that is inside you, that is again made of consciousness and awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I mean, I don't know if what's coming to my mind is, just my experience of the same subject material, course content. My experience of it is different the second go through than it is the first go through. And my rationalization or explanation of it had to do with my identity being different, that I was a different person. But what I've seen is this, no, my level of consciousness is different. Like I'm the same being, or the same, my soul is the same as it was from when I was that little 2-foot Greg Fisher looking at himself in the mirror to now the almost 6-foot Greg Fisher.
You've changed a great deal without changing anything at all.
Yeah.
The line in a Pearl Jam song that says, I change by not changing at all. I've always loved.
One of the paragraphs that struck me, probably because it's timely and that there's been in a lot of conversations with people lately about finding peace. On page 26, he says, to explore this more deeply, answer another question. Don't you have times when you're not having emotional experiences and instead you just feel quiet inside? You're still in there, but you're just aware of peaceful quiet. Eventually, you will begin to realize that the outside world and the flow of inner emotions come and go. But you, the one who experiences these things, remain consciously aware of what passes before. And that kind of goes back to so many conversations with people lately about, I just want to have peace, and I just want to have, like a quiet mind, and I want to be restful, and their idea is that I'll change all these things to have that. But just this one paragraph to me was like, oh, that just seems so simple. You're having emotional experiences and they're causing you not to feel peaceful. Yeah, just nothing else is. Everything else out there you don't have to touch. It's that. I really like that.
One of my guilty pleasures as a grown man is watching the Kung Fu Panda movies. And I think it's the second one where Po discovers inner peace. He just kind of like stumbles across it. And Shifu has been studying his whole life to get inner peace and still hasn't got it. He's like, Shifu, I think I discovered inner peace. And he's like, yeah, of course you did. Like, just one.
Yeah.
I have a great little cartoon actually that speaks to that. I'll send it to you. I think it's happiness actually. It's like 2 little t-shirts and one's got happiness on it. I'm probably bodging it all together, but he's like, where did you find that? And he's like, oh, it was inside all along.
Kind of summarizes things here. He says, so if I ask So now if I ask you, who are you? You answer, I am the one who sees from back in here somewhere. I look out. I'm aware of the events, thoughts, and emotions that pass before me. If you go very deep, that is where you live. You live in the seat of consciousness.
Hmm. So like when he speaks about, from consciousness to try the consciousness experiment, and I'm sitting here thinking I'm not very good at experiments, it's going to be confusing. And just like simply, notice that with a single glance at a room or out a window, you instantaneously feel the full detail of everything. He goes on and explain that. But he explains it so simply, just like doing normal things that normal people do, but in a different way from a different perspective. And with a different process, let's say, like, yes, we do unconsciously see so much. I mean, like I'm sitting here looking at a screen. I can see three other people, and Lynne's background and Vanessa's background and Greg's background. You see a lot of stuff, and like that just sits there quite peacefully, if you like, behind you. Because I'm not. But if I go in and let's scrutinize, well, what's behind Greg's screen? Oh, well, he's got his logo there, and I wonder what that book's about. And oh, I don't know if I would want to be reading that. And so it goes on. So that means, oh, well, if I don't think that, well, I wonder what Greg's thinking to have to go and read that book. Oh my God, it's a nightmare. But we do that. We do that. And this just takes it. It's a U-turn. It's a U-turn. You're on the motorway and you've just suddenly realized, oh my goodness, I don't need to be going there. And you just sort of break all the laws, crash through the barrier, turn around and go back again. Yes. Love it.
Yeah. It's funny, from last week's conversation, I had an image of a metaphor for that voice in my head as the Tasmanian devil from the old Bugs Bunny cartoons, of just, whirling around back and forth all over the place. And that's okay.
Yeah. And I've got if I can share it here, it's a story from Hindu mythology, which I think is kind of, relevant to what we're talking about. And there was a time, it says, when all human beings were gods, but they abused their divinity. So Brahma, the chief god, decided to take the divinity away from them and hide it somewhere they could never find it. So Brahma called a council of the gods to help him decide where to hide the divinity. And they said, let's bury it deep in the earth, they said. But Brahma answers, no, humans will dig into the earth and find it. So some of the other gods suggested, well, let's sink it into the deepest ocean. But Brahma said, no, humans will learn to dive into the ocean and will find it. And then some other gods suggested, well, let's take it to the top of the highest mountain and hide it there. And Brahma replied, humans will climb up every mountain. And then all the gods gave up and said, we do not know where to hide it, because it seems that there's no place on earth or ocean that human beings will not eventually reach. So Brahma thought for a long time and said, we will hide their divinity deep into the center of their own being. Humans will search for it. Humans will search for it here and there, but they won't look for the divinity inside their true selves. All the gods agreed that this was the perfect hiding place, and the deed was done. And since then, humans have been going up and down the earth, digging, diving, climbing, and exploring, searching for something which already lies within themselves. And I think that's kind of sums up the chapter, I think.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's excellent, awesome.
Because he also kind of mentions right at the end. This is a seat of the Buddha self, the Hindu are man, and the Judeo-Christian soul, divinity, whatever. I guess we can call it what we like. It's whatever it is. And I think it's nice that he speaks, across the board, across all human beings, and whilst encompassing, let's say, people's religious beliefs, it becomes very clear that what he's talking about is, okay, the seat, but it is way beyond even a religious approach. It's even deeper than that, which also maybe could somehow, if more people could read this book or think about it or consider it, it might even end a few wars, Iran and Hezbollah and Ukraine and Russia, things might kind of Afghanistan, because it's just so way beyond all of that. And we've got it within us.
Yeah. It's as upstream as you can get.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like how he ends the chapter. The great mystery begins once you take that seat deep within. And it's kind of, to me, it's like, oh, we're just getting going here. Like it's, there's lots to come.
Yeah. Yeah. Whole new story, whole new journey.
Anything else to add before we wrap up? Well, next week we'll do chapter 4, the lucid self. Looking forward to that.